We are glad to have you with us today, and we started the lesson about the Centurion Servant last week. We're looking at Matthew's account of this in Matthew 8, verses 5 through 13, and I'd like to read that again and get our mind on what we are thinking about here. It says, "And when he was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord, my servant lieth in the house, sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And he said unto him, I will come and heal him. And the centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou should come under my roof, but only say the word that, and my servant shall be healed. For I also am a man under authority, having under myself soldiers, and I say to this one, go, and he goeth, and another come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. And when Jesus heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom shall be cast forth into outer darkness, and there shall be the weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way as thou hast believed, so it be done unto thee. And the servant was healed in that hour." Now, the account that's found in Luke chapter 7 also has some extra details. And later in this class, I plan to read through it to catch those details and talk about the few extra things. But this morning we're kind of working more or less from this passage from Matthew. Now, we looked at all these things last week. So let me just quickly kind of go through the things that it says here. First of all, this event may have happened before the Sermon on the Mount. We talked about Centurion is a commander of the Roman army. He would be a leader basically over 100 other soldiers. Of course, Israel was under Roman occupation, as most of the world was back in those days, under that Roman Empire. And so they were the ones that were like policing the area, so to speak, and keeping the peace and that kind of thing. And so he would be the leader over these soldiers in that area. But this centurion had a servant. And so he asked Jesus if he would heal the servant. And then we asked the question, did the centurion have an understanding of true authority? And our answer was, of course, yes, he did. He was a man of authority. If I'm the centurion and you are one of my soldiers or you're one of my servants, and I tell you to go somewhere, you go. If you're somewhere and I send a message for you to come to me, you're going to come. If I tell you to do something, that's what you do. It works that way in today's military too, doesn't it? Military people understand that when somebody of a higher rank tells you to do something, you just simply do it. And you go and do as you're instructed to do. And so the centurion had this understanding about authority, and so he understood the authority of Jesus, that Jesus had the authority to heal people, and he believed that Jesus could heal his servant. All he had to do was ask him. You just say the word, he'll be healed. You have that authority. So he understood that. All right, so that gets us into this part today. What did Jesus say about this centurion as he had come to him?
He'd never seen such faith even in Israel.
Okay. Had not seen this kind of faith even in Israel. The Jewish people should have had faith, shouldn't they? The children of Israel had been told about the Messiah for hundreds of years. The Messiah is coming. The Christ is coming. The anointed one. He's coming, he's coming, he's coming. This is what he's going to look like. And then when Jesus is here, they didn't recognize him. They could not recognize him. And they had no faith in him. But here's a man a Gentile. He was raised with the children of Israel. He recognized it. And he understood it. And Jesus commended him for that. I hadn't seen anybody with this great a faith in all of Israel, not from any of the Jews. And here's a Gentile man that has this great faith that I can heal his servant. Isn't that something? I'm going to keep coming back to that, folks. I am just really impressed with this centurion. So I asked the question then, what is the message of verse 11 and 12? And we'll look at that, and then we'll come back to some other things about the centurion. 11 and 12 is where Jesus said, I say unto you that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What is Jesus saying in these two verses?
He's talking about when we get to heaven, we'll sit there. But the church, basically, he's talking about, I believe.
Okay. James believes he's talking about the day in heaven when the church will be translated there and be there. Anybody else got any thoughts? I think he's saying that, James, but I think he's saying a little bit more than that, because when he says people come from the east and the west, I think he's making a reference there of the Gentile people. Not just people here in Israel, not people in Galilee and Judea and round about here, but people from the east and from the west. People from everywhere are going to come into this kingdom. They're going to sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in heaven. I believe that's what he's talking about someday. And the sons of the kingdom, well, here's the one these are the ones going to be cast into outer darkness, is some of the very ones that should have known better. Some of the ones that should have known and seen and understood this gospel when it comes. The gospel is first to be brought to the Jews and then later to the Gentiles. And what happened many times? Paul, later on, he would go into whatever city. First place he'd go was where? The synagogues. And he got varied results, but oftentimes was rejected by at least most of them. Sometimes there might be a few that would listen and hear and get it, but for the most part, they rejected. Okay, now I'm going to go to the marketplace and talk to the other people in this town, the Gentiles. And that's where the people started obeying the gospel. For when you think about the people in Ephesus and Philippi and Corinth and Thessalonica and all these places, the majority of them that obeyed the gospel came from the Gentile people. Because this was Gentile land, wasn't it? And there's very few Jews that lived there anyway. But that's who they come from. And so I think that's what he's talking about right here.
He talks about the church east and west. It's all inclusive. That's the only way that, it couldn't be the Jewish nation. It had to be the church.
Yes.
He said they will come, And we not only is it in heaven that we sit down with, but when we do the Lord's will, we're sitting down with Abraham and all the godly men of the past
Yes.
to embrace the teachings of God.
We are the kingdom here on earth, aren't we? And absolutely. And as the United States of America, we got Canada and Mexico and our oceans. But as the kingdom of God, we have no boundaries. We go all the way around the earth, north and south, east and west. Every way, we have brothers and sisters in Christ in every nation that's out there where they've obeyed the gospel. And so very much that. And so that's the east and the west of those things. When was this servant healed?
The hour that Jesus said he was.
Yes. It wasn't, next week or a couple of months. He was healed right away. And of course, this old translation I'm reading from talks about one that he had the palsy, and I think New King James Version says he was paralyzed. And so that's what it was. It was a paralysis that he had. and the paralysis went away. And he just like that. He's just like the man that get up, take your bed, and walk. That happened a time or two in Jesus' life. Probably many times that's not even recorded where these things happen. All right, so let's look at Luke's account. Let's read it, and there is a thing or two there that we'll think about along the way. Luke 7, and we're starting in verse 1. After he had ended all of his sayings in the ears of the people, he entered into Capernaum, and a certain centurion servant who was dear unto him, and the sick was at the point of death. And when he had heard concerning Jesus, he sent unto him elders and the Jews, asking him that he would come and save his servant. And they, when they came to Jesus, besought him earnestly, saying, He is worthy that he shouldest do this for him, for he loveth our nation, and himself built us a synagogue. And Jesus went with them, and when he was now not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying unto him, Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof. Wherefore neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee. But say the word, and my servant shall be healed. For I also am a man set under authority, having under myself soldiers. I say to this one, Go, and he goes, to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. And when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turned and said unto the multitude that followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And they that were sent, returning to the house, found the servant whole. Okay, so there are some different details that are found here where some people may say there's some contradictions. Let's see if they are or not. First, the centurion sent the town elders to fetch Jesus. You might notice that that's something that Luke says, that the elders of the city said, would you go and find Jesus? Matthew said that the centurion sought him. Luke said that he sent the elders of Jesus. Now, is this a contradiction? Okay, why is this not a contradiction, Carrie?
General statement of he sought him. He knew who would know where he was, so he went to the elders of the city. He did all his due diligence to find him.
Okay. Carrie said that he went to the elders of the city to do the seeking, and that was his diligence. You know, if you are working in a corporation or a business where you've got a high up position, and you got that desk job, and you need to get somebody on the phone. Oftentimes, don't you? Hazel, will you call so and so for me? You're seeking someone. Will you find someone? Will you call the secretary, don't you? You buzz the secretary, will you go find him? Or you get someone else to go do that. And that's kind of, he's a man of authority. He's a man of position. And he goes to the elders of the city and says, I need to see this Jesus. And he asked them to do that. Okay? Secondly, it talks here about how this centurion had been good to the Jews. This shows me that the centurion had been paying attention. He had been paying attention to perhaps the history of the Jews. I'm sure there was some point in his life he had to start like any other. He was starting out maybe as a soldier among the Roman army, and as time came, he gets moving up in rank and everything. And then he has got the appointment to go to Capernaum and be a centurion in the city or the town of Capernaum. And, this is something he may not have had to do, but I think that maybe he did some diligence to find out, well, let me find out more about these Jewish people. What are they about? Who is this God that they follow? What? And so he knows a bit of the history, whether he wants to believe it or not. He finds out some of those things like that. And also, he's going to keep up with current events, isn't he? If you're watching out for what's going on in town, you need to kind of have your ear to the ground of what's going on, what's happening around. And I tell you, Jesus had already been out there for several months, not only in Capernaum, but in other cities very near Capernaum, doing what? Healing people. And he'd been teaching too, but mainly we've been reading a whole lot about the healing. And so he'd been healing people around about. You know, this man knew about that. He had to know about it. You had to know that some of the soldiers had said some things to him and told him some things about that. Maybe he had seen this himself standing afar. Here's some things I want us to think about right here. First of all, this scripture in Luke tells us that he truly cared for the people of Capernaum. For one thing, it told us that he built a synagogue for them. So, you know, he didn't come in with an iron hand and telling his soldiers, you know, these people are going to bow down to us and serve us and all that. But he came in just mainly, I think, to kind of keep the peace in the city, keep everyone safe. And apparently there was the need of the synagogue, and he saw that it was done, that they got a synagogue there. So he truly cared about these people. Secondly, he truly cared for this servant. I can picture some other leader or someone that's got some power that has a servant, their servant's sick. Well, that's just too bad. You know, it's just a servant. You know, hope the family will let them mourn for him a while if he dies, and that'll be it. But no, he cared about this servant, and he wanted relief for this servant, that he might be useful once again. Also, we've talked about this some already. He understood and he believed the power of Jesus. He sent these elders to seek Jesus because he believed that Jesus would heal this servant. There was no guessing about it. He knew that Jesus had that power and Jesus had that ability, and Jesus only. Don't be seeking the Pharisees or the Sadducees or a high priest or someone. No, Jesus is the one he asked for. He didn't ask for John the Baptist either, did he? He asked for Jesus. Jesus. We believe that Jesus has this power to heal, and he understood that. Fourthly, he humbled himself in the sight of the Lord. That song just started going through my head as I was putting these points together. Didn't he? He humbled himself before Jesus, even though it wasn't him personally, but in a sense he did. He was one that if he had gone himself, I could see him bowing down to Jesus or kneeling or something of that nature. He humbled himself in the sight of the Lord because he knew that Jesus had this great power. So this centurion certainly had been very good to the Jews, and it just shows a lot of the character that he had. But then, after they found out about it, it wasn't really the elders. The centurion sent friends to meet Jesus on the way. So the elders went and got him, and Jesus is on his way, and while he's on his way, he sends out now some friends to go and speak to Jesus. And does this contradict what Matthew said? Well, I'm going to say no for the same reason what Kerry said for the first part. He sent this message through the messenger. His friends were messengers to go. And I'm here for Eric Hagan. He's my centurion boss or whatever and all that. And he understands that, you know, if he tells someone to go, they go, and do this, you do it, and all that. That's what he wanted me to tell you, and he understands you got authority, and he would like for you to heal his servant. And so, in a sense, he's sending friends to say and be his spokesperson for him. And so that's where he has that. Thoughts here?
I was, as I read this, I was a little bit surprised So, I just was surprised that they said, well, you know, he's a fraud and all they might have said to him. But, of course, they had seen the healing too going on. I heard.
Yes. So James is saying he was surprised that the elders would be willing to go seek Jesus, being that, you know, they didn't believe Jesus. That's what we've been reading about the Pharisees and the scribes and so forth, that they didn't believe. And so that was basically it with the elders. I kind of think James, I hadn't thought of that till you said it, but just off the top of my head, just thinking about that is, you know, just because of the goodness of the centurion, they were willing to do it anyway. And as you said, they had seen that he had been healing. So that would be a part of that. You do things that you would do. I don't know if I ought to say this in public or not. I'm not going to say the place, but there was a particular place, an eating place in town that I just will not go to. I just won't go there anymore. And, well, it's not there anymore either. So when it was there, I wouldn't go. But when my mother was alive, we kept her for a couple of weeks and was taking care of her. And so Melanie said, we're just going to get some food and eat out tonight. We had 2 grandchildren, and I said, Doug, you may be going to multiple places. Everybody going to give you an order and go. Well, my mother wanted something from that place. I did it for Mama. You know, I did it for her. And you know, that's kind of maybe what happens here. You do it for the centurion. You would go and you would do that. So that's the deal.
Not all the Jews, not all those that were in authority were against.
Not all.
Didn't believe Jesus, so I mean, you know, it could be that part too. Not only what you just said, but also that part too. That they did believe, they did have the faith in Jesus and understood.
Yeah, you know, of course, you know, there was Nicodemus that already come to him inquiring and trying to use an open mind, and it could have been some of that too. The Bible don't really say. It is a good kind of thought to think about, but if you want an honest Bible answer, the Bible's silent, I think would be probably the best answer. We were just kind of maybe speculating on why that is. Anything else here about the centurion, Kerry?
I find it interesting that his station in life, he said twice in verses 6 and 7, he said, for I am not worthy that thou should come under my roof. And then he said, I myself am not worthy to come unto thee.
Yeah.
So that's probably some of it. I mean, he realized this was true authority.
Yes.
God, not a man.
That's where I got the humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. I am not worthy. Yeah, I started seeing that. Centurion didn't feel worthy to even come to him. And, you know, who am I to ask you this? But I'm asking. And, you know, that's really kind of where we are today, isn't it? It's where we should all be. We're not worthy, but we ask. And be careful, I don't want to get into Wednesday's lesson. Artie and I already had enough discussion about that this morning. So anyway, we'll get to that then. But that's where we are. All right, with the few minutes we have left, let's look at this story over here in Luke 7 while we're here. And starts in verse 11. Luke 7, verse 11. And it came to pass soon afterwards that he went to the city called Nain, and his disciples went with him, and a great multitude. Now when he drew near the gate of the city, behold, there was carried out one that was dead, the only son of the mother, and she was a widow. And much people of the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And he came nigh, and touched the bier. And the bearer stood still. And he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up and began to speak. And he gave him to his mother. And the fear took hold on all, and they glorified God, saying, A great prophet is arisen among us, and God hath visited his people. And this report went forth concerning him in the whole of Judea and the region round about. All right, so let's get about 10 minutes worth on this subject here this morning. Okay, first of all, Nain was about 10 miles south of Nazareth. So that's the place where these things took place. Who was with Jesus when he went to Nain?
His disciples
All right, disciples were with him.
and a large crowd.
A large crowd, a multitude. Wouldn't we call that maybe a multitude? A large crowd of people. A lot of people were following him. It seemed like oftentimes that when Jesus went from place to place and he was walking from place to place, it was like a parade, wasn't it? It was just people just kept gathering and just walking with him. And I could see him going down the dirt road and people just collecting and, more and more collecting along the way and adding to the crowd and the number and so forth. And maybe people running up in front of him wanting to be, a blessing or maybe heal someone or something such as the centurion. But he is coming to this town of Nain, about 10 miles south of Nazareth, with a big entourage of people, I guess you could say. What did they see when they entered the city? All right, they saw a dead man and his mother.
Sort of funeral procession.
Okay, that's where I was looking for, James. It was a funeral procession. And, Blue, you have to have a dead person to have a funeral procession. And the people, the family that's with them and friends. And that's what was going on. It was a funeral procession where, they're going to bury the body. And, of course, my understanding, mostly the burials back then were caves or cut out places, and they'd take them like they did with Jesus, and they'd roll the stone over the tomb, and they just entomb them at some location. But that's what they were doing. There was this funeral procession taking place, and Jesus is observing this as well as the other people that come about. So what miracle was performed?
Raise the dead.
All right, we see a raising of the dead. Wow. Maybe someone here has brought back somebody from the dead. We call it CPR, right? Doctors and nurses and medical emergency people, and all, they do this every day. Somewhere this is being happening. But you don't see anybody go into the funeral home, reach over the casket, and bring somebody back from the dead, do you? Somebody, after just 5 minutes or so, 5 minutes, it's pretty much over. And that person's dead, and you can't bring them back then, unless you've got the power of the Holy Spirit like Jesus had. I do know a case, there was this was just a few years ago, where the person heart had been stopped for 7 or 8 minutes, and they got it beaten again. But then the doctors, when they got the person down to the emergency room, the doctor said, this person's never going to, they're gone. They're brain dead. Their brain isn't functioning anymore. Their heart is beating. And it's just a matter of time. It's going to stop beating again. So it was over. And so this is a whole different thing when you got someone that's been dead to bring them back to life. We think about that. So this isn't something that just had happened a minute or two before or whatever. This person was a funeral procession. They'd already maybe have wrapped the body and done those things in preparation for a burial and so forth.
And the thing of it is that you hear cases today, they'll tell, but we think they're dead.
Yes.
They may not be. Here it said, so he who was dead sat up So the Bible said he was dead.
Yes.
So that's, that's fine. Now, we could say someone's dead and maybe we've overlooked
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been some.
We're looking at it, when your example there of somebody CPR or somebody, that is the human side. The death, according to Scripture, is when the soul leaves the body.
Yes.
So a person to us, when we say, well, they brought them back from the dead, no, they did not bring them. Scripturally, they did not bring them back. Physically, maybe, and that may be confusing. But their soul had not left their body. When their soul leaves their body, there is no coming back.
Yes.
When that separates, there is no coming back. So the world, it was a miracle. They brought them. No, that was not a miracle. That was, again, that soul had not left. So physically, the way we look at things, if they've got the monitor on and the monitor goes, that straight line when you see on TV, they show that
Yes.
straight line. Well, that's man's machine, man's invention, man's thing that shows, okay, that's stopped. But has the soul actually left?
Right. The heart has just stopped beating.
Just stopped beating.
And so, yeah, I'm glad you said that because, because people would look at CPR as a miracle healing, and it's not. It's just, you're just getting the heart restarted. That person has not yet been separated from body and soul and spirit. So, exactly, we got to always remember that. This person was certifiably dead, is the point. And so, how did the multitude react to that? Fear came upon them all. All right, what else? There's something else there. They glorify God. Okay. There must be three answers, and I missed the first two here. There's something else I'm looking at.
They called Jesus a prophet.
All right, they call Jesus a prophet. There may be four things then. Well, that's kind of the fear. They begin to do what?
he began to talk. The guy did.
The guy talked. Okay. Maybe I missed something here. They marveled. Okay, a lot of things happened then. Okay, some good answers. One I'm looking for is that this report went forth concerning him. In other words, the news spread about this. So there was some fame of Jesus that took place. And all these answers you just gave are good answers. They're correct and all. I appreciate that. I'm sorry I missed all that. But that's sort of the one I focused upon, is that the news spread. This would be like... Did you hear what Timothy did the other day? Somebody did something just really great, or something that's just really unique, or something, and so you go and tell everybody about it. We might brag about something, even like something our grandchild, one of our grandchildren, they've done something great in sports, or an activity that they're involved in, or whatever it is, or your child even. You talk about these things, and you spread the news about good things that happen, sort of a spreading of that. So this is what happened with this story. All right, so we're going to kind of just hang it loose right here. I am going to be away for a couple of weeks, and I think a missionary is coming one Sunday to fill this class. I forgot who and what country, and I imagine one of the downstairs adult teachers will bring their class up here and fill the other one. But we're going to be away. When we get back, we're going to be looking at a message from John the Baptist. This is from Matthew 11 and also Luke 7. We're going to be looking at those passages as John is in prison, and he gets his disciples to ask Jesus a question, and then Jesus is going to talk about some things about John. I tell you what, there's a lot in that lesson. We could be there a while. And then after that, Jesus is going to go over to the house of Simon the Pharisee. And some things are going to happen there. And then after that, we're going to be on Life of Jesus for a long time. So appreciate that then. Hope everybody does have a great week. Hope we have a wonderful service here in a moment. And if you're watching online, we'll be back in about 10 minutes while the worship service